Well, here we are, April 29th for the first Audible of the season, and not a moment too soon. Just finished off with the draft. Whole new season of all new hopes and dreams for every franchise. This is very exciting, and I'm joined with two of the stars of the show that made this show so successful last year. And thank you guys so much for joining us and starting afresh, anew. First off, out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Mr. Donnie Rightside. How you doing on this Monday afternoon?
Hey, man, look, it's never too early to talk football, especially right after the draft, as you said. There have been a while. I mean, last time me and Whale Cap were on camera, what was it, just before the Super Bowl down in Costa Rica? So some good times have you had, and good catching up with you fellas.
Oh, what a treat. What a treat it is to roll with you guys. And out of Los Angeles, California, Whale Capper joining us on this Monday afternoon. How you doing?
I'm so well. I'm overflowing with hot takes about the draft and about the NFL. I cannot wait to get into this card with into the reactions with you guys and kind of lay out a little bit of how the off season's gone and what to look forward to as we head into the betting markets for 2019.
Absolutely. So I've got the season win totals up. I got the futures up, and we need to talk about the draft especially. And we are joined by our crew, our Audible crew in the chat. They were so enormously important to our show last year, and they're joining us right now on Monday, April 29th. Shout out to Carlos Luders, Joe Rich Ramirez, Christopher Carter, and Merrick. What a treat it is to be back in action and early in the year. This is what we didn't get last year. We started mid-season sort of. I mean, I started with Donnie at the beginning of the year, but then Whale Capper came in a few weeks into the season, and now having all this time to think about our analysis before the season starts, I think is going to help us cash a lot of tickets. Well, I will start leading us in certain directions, but you guys can feel free to take control at any time and move us into a different direction. And before we talk about the number one overall pick and sort of maybe, talk about the Cardinals and talk about the NFC West, which is a division that's near and dear to Whale Capper and I's heart, we have to talk about the what do we call it? The elephant in the room, the New England Patriots. They win the Super Bowl, and it certainly feels like they win the draft. A pretty spectacular work from Belichick. First off, he had a feeling with the 32nd pick that 7 wide receivers were going to go in the second round. So he gets N'Keal Harry out of Arizona State. Great compliment to Julian Edelman. Jawan Williams out of Vanderbilt, the cornerback that he drafted, is getting just rave reviews. Then you got Chase Winovich. Damian Harris is actually getting some positive reviews, and I've been reading some negative ones. Not everybody likes that pick, but all told, they didn't draft a tight end. We're still wondering if Kyle Rudolph is going to be traded for. They drafted a right-footed punter. The Patriots picked 10 players in the draft, and let's start with you, Donnie. Did the Patriots win the Super Bowl and then win the draft?
I mean, look, when we look at the Patriots and what they do, isn't it just like look at this and be like, this is such a Patriots draft. Never a panic move. There's no need to trade up or like get real expensive saying, boy, we lost Gronkowski. We got to, make some moves to get a tight end. They just let everything come to them because when it's all said and done, it's Bill Belichick, it's Tom Brady, and you can just roll whoever you want out on the field and it doesn't matter. But this year, finally, Jimmy, I think in the AFC East, times are finally going to start changing for the future. But looking at their draft, N'Keal Harry's a great draft pick. The kid Williams out of Vanderbilt is going to be a day one starter, whether it be on the outside or inside, slot corner. He's going to get a lot of playing time. And when you look at the Damian Harris move, they just have like 19 running backs that, if one shows up late to practice on a Monday, he gets benched even though he had 240 yards the previous week and 25 touches. It's just what they do. They'll be able to roll along. You see what their team total's 11. They'll hit that. They'll be the first round at home. They'll beat the second round at home. They'll be in the playoffs again next year in the Super Bowl. And that's just the way it is.
Oh, man. I guess that is the way it is. Well, Capper, at IFBC, you decided to fade the Patriots through the first 4 games of the season, and that was successful. And your breakdown of the Patriots was extremely interesting. One of the most interesting things at the whole conference. Now, it looks like they've won the draft. They completely reload is your analysis going to be extremely different than it was last year?
I don't know. Not entirely bought into these players. Not entirely bought into the Patriots draft, and a lot of that is because I think overall, I don't think this was a very good draft class in general. I think top to bottom, this was one of the kind of maybe bottom 5 in the last 10 years in terms of talent in this draft. They made the most out of the picks they had, so I applaud them there. They got ahead of the run of wide receivers and got a guy that they valued over a bunch of other guys who were pretty compatible. So I applaud them there. But they still have some holes on this team that they didn't address, really. They're still lacking some talent at some key positions on the defense. And whether that matters or not is, anyone's guess, because they're able to scheme around it throughout the entirety of the playoffs. So. And, as Donnie mentioned, like, they own the AFC East. The AFC East looks like Patriots and 3 also-rans again this year. So, pretty much pencil them in for a home playoff game in either week 1 or week 2. And, if you put Tom Brady in the playoffs and, he's got more experience and, more, better coaching than any other team out there, then they got a live shot. But I think the team that really won the draft, if I was going to throw one out there, I think the Browns won this draft. And part of it kind of piggybacks on my reason why, I wasn't super thrilled really with any team that had a whole bunch of draft picks this year. The Browns got Odell Beckham Jr., for the draft capital that they would have otherwise gotten a couple of players that they would have had to turn in, have to coach up and develop. They get a player in Greedy Williams who people knock him for not being able to tackle, but like, that's not as important in today's NFL. You want a guy who's got cover skills, and Greedy Williams has cover skills. If it turns out it's because of an injury that he slid, then maybe my opinion on that changes. But I think they got a good player there who slid. I think they got a good player in Mack Wilson who slid, a linebacker who can absolutely be a contributor for like 4 years to this team. So overall, I think the Browns really did the best in terms of positioning themselves to compete this year with their young quarterback and with a set of skill players who are going to be very, very tough to match up against for any defense in the AFC. So really, the Browns were the biggest winner of the weekend, in my opinion.
Well, let's talk about the Browns a little bit. Over under season win total, 9 wins. They did get Sheldrick Redwine at safety in the 4th round, which look, it seems like that'll be a really nice spot. He's a good size safety. He can run. They took Austin Seibert, a kicker, in the 5th round. That's questionable. First look, Donnie, Cleveland Browns draft picks and the over-under total at 9 wins. It's juiced to the over at this point. What are you thinking about this Cleveland Browns this year?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, are they better than last year? Which, I mean, they had more wins last year combined than it seemed like the previous 3 or 4 years before that. But what are we actually getting from them, and how quickly can the team mold it? Because when you're getting a lot of skilled players in that room, first-year head football coach, and a team that's not really used to winning, are they talented? Extremely talented. I think Greedy, and I actually really like what the Browns doing, because I want to preface this by saying they can get away with a lot of stuff some other already entrenched teams can't. When you have a fan base and you're in a city that all they want to do is win, they can take on guys that, Kareem Hunt level and put them on this team and have no pressure about it whatsoever. Well, we stink and we really want to win, so everybody really wants to have a lot of fun and, get on this team. And then you see him go out and get his Odell Beckham Jr. He hasn't won anything in New York, but he's a high-level talent. They'll take that on. A new GM, a swashbuckler quarterback that's like, dude, I'll lead us. Just, give me the football and get after it. But I think it's going to come together a little bit too quickly. I think you're going to have some growing pains from the quarterbacking position in his second year now that there's film on him. I think all these guys coming together. Let's not forget, Odell Beckham wants the ball, and so does his boy wants the ball as well right next to him. So when you factor that in, who's going to be that red zone target? Who's going to get more? Where is that competition going to be with him and Landry? That's where it gets a little bit dicey. Their talent is there. But you're talking about taking a team that had no pressure on last year, got Mayfield in there, picks up what they end up with, 6 wins or 7 wins last year. Now you're looking in for a jump at 9, and you don't cash that ticket, Jimmy, unless you get the 10 wins, which means you're probably going to win the division. I don't know if they're there yet, but they're on their way for sure.
There are only 6 teams with lower odds to win the Super Bowl than the Browns: the Patriots, Rams, Chiefs, Saints, Chargers, and Bears. The Browns have lower odds to win the Super Bowl than the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, that's just nuts.
Unbelievable.
That's just nuts. And to win the division now, they have lower odds than the Steelers, At this book I'm looking at right now, plus 137 to win the AFC North, where the Steelers are at plus 200. The Ravens are at plus 225. The Bengals are at plus 1,800. Now, we could, and I'm going to try to keep our pace up. We could talk. There's so many things we need to talk about. We'll just keep moving from one thing to another. But now that we're in the AFC North, tell me what you think. And we'll start with Whale Capper here. The Ravens go out and pick very exciting wide receivers, Marquise Brown and Miles Boykin. Now, do they have the wrong quarterback? Is this a mistake here when you have Lamar Jackson? Is this a point where you're looking at the four offenses in the AFC North and saying, well, they just picked two very exciting wide receivers, and I think they have I think the Bengals have a better offense than them because Lamar Jackson's not going to be able to utilize these wide receivers. What do you think about what the Ravens did in the draft, and how do you see the Ravens moving forward and the AFC North in general, Whale Cap?
Yeah, no, I think that their picks were pretty questionable. I don't get at all why you would go for speed guys, because your weakness as far as your quarterback is accuracy. Lamar Jackson is not a especially accurate quarterback. He's not going to be able to find these guys, landed on a postage stamp downfield where they can get open. If I were the Ravens, I would absolutely have been looking for a guy more of like the Nuke Hopkins type of mold, a guy with an enormous catch radius who could kind of gloss over some of my quarterback's accuracy issues. They did not go in that direction, which I thought was strange. And I think that they are going to look like they take a significant step back offensively next year. Number one, because now teams have a full offseason to kind of prepare for the approach that they rolled out over the last half of the season. It was a very run-heavy approach. They were able to rack up yards and points and wins against some pretty soft teams and some pretty suspect defenses. I think that with a much tougher schedule this year, they're having come off the top of the AFC North. They draw the two division winners that the other two teams, the Steelers and the Browns, don't have to play. The Ravens also lost a ton of important pieces on defense through free agency. I don't like anything really that the Ravens have kind of gone through this offseason, and they are a massive fade in my book, both in terms of potential to win the AFC North this year, as well as kind of making their win total. It's I don't love anything the Bengals are really doing either. I can't really tell you what they're going to roll out in terms of coaching and approach, and Andy Dalton kind of as a lame duck quarterback, kind of playing out the last year of this contract here. They look like they're probably going to be a bottom 2, bottom 3 team, top of the draft next year, and kind of take their quarterback of the future. So I guess that really just leaves, in my opinion, in the AFC North, you're talking about Browns and Steelers. I could see both teams going over their win total and kind of coming down to the end of the season, who wins kind of the clutch games at the end of the season, who wins the AFC North between those two.
The Ravens at 8 wins was their season win total. I would agree with you that the under and that they should be faded early. Then we move over to Cleveland, as we spoke about, the 9. The Bengals are at 6. I was heavy on the Bengals under last year, and they got out of the gate nicely, and they still cashed that under last year. And then we come to Pittsburgh, who is not the favorite to win the division, and their win total is at 8.5. Now that is juiced to the over. Donnie, AFC North, what do you think about this analysis?
Yeah, I had that one circled. I have a couple teams' win totals, which, again, I'm not the greatest win total guy, but just trying to project. We see it in the NFL. It's a copycat league. And the smartest people in the room are going to get the positions done. And the outsmarting of people happens during the season. In the offseason, that's where everything is corrected. How many times did we see back in like the mid-2000s, the Wildcat comes out of nowhere and dominates? In one offseason, it was absolutely obsolete. You saw Colin Kaepernick out here running the read option, the Chip Kelly offense, which stunned a couple teams. Within the following season, they was absolutely obsolete, and you can't run those type of offenses anymore. So now you're going to say, all right, the Ravens running that throwback offense. And wasn't it a lot of fun at the end of the year when Lamar Jackson's coming in, throwing 16 passes a game, running 22 times? Ooh, look at him hand off and run up the middle and play really good defense. And then all of a sudden I bought into the juice. And in the playoffs, I'm like, you know what? I think they got a pretty good game plan. They can win over the smaller Chargers. And they were flat out embarrassed, which lays that game plan out that says, make the quarterback beat him. He can't make any reads. He doesn't throw on time. And just mush rush them and have athletes that can chase them down. They completely wrecked them. If they're going to come into this season and try that same type of stuff, it's not going to work. So, I mean, DraftKings out of New Jersey is 8.5 as a total. I love the under on the Ravens in this, and I think Will Capper brings up a great point. When you're looking for wide receivers, if my quarterback is inaccurate, you know who I want out there? 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", like giraffes out there where he can overthrow them by 3 or 4 yards and they can make a play on it. Marquise Brown beating his man deep by 5 yards and still gets overthrown. That's going to be, and they say all the time as well, like, oh, well, he can run are we just going to run jet sweeps with our first round draft pick at 25? Marquise Brown in a passing, put him with like the Philadelphia Eagles or the New England Patriots, and you would watch him sizzle, or with the Kansas City Chiefs. He would have been phenomenal. But putting him in this offense, it's almost like, to me, you should be spending your resources on building a nasty offensive line and playing really good defense and saying, I hope our quarterback can make a couple plays a game, almost like the early 1990s Randall Cunningham Philadelphia Eagles used to do, and say, we'll see if this works. Getting wide receivers to run timing routes and smaller wide receivers makes zero sense for this offense.
Oh, I love it. I think that was very, very succinct and well put. Now, let's get to some other key points within this draft. Steve Keim, Cardinals general manager, first overall pick. So he's the first person to ever take 2 quarterbacks in the top 10 of the draft in 2 years in a row. So then he turns around and he trades Josh Rosen, the 10th overall pick last year, for the number 62 pick in the draft. So you'd say, wow, you took a huge loss on that one. What a clown. What an embarrassment. Then he steps up. It looks like this Cardinals draft class is extremely strong. First off, you get who we think is the top quarterback available in Kyler Murray. Then we get who is arguably the best cornerback in the class in Byron Murphy. They use the Rosen pick to get UMass receiver Andy Isabella. That should make things easier for them. They get Hakeem Butler out of Iowa State. They already have Christian Kirk. They get Zach Allen in the beginning of the 3rd round. They're creating a life after Larry, a life after Fitzgerald. So adding Keyshawn Johnson out of Fresno. Deontay Thompson is a good fit with Budda Baker. And then you look at the Arizona win total of 5.5 wins. A lot of people are saying that I would rather have Josh Rosen than Kyler Murray. And I'd love to hear both you guys touch on everything I just broke down. How do you think Steve Keim did? Did he make something after taking the big loss on Rosen? Let's start with you, Whale Capper. NFC West, how do you think the Cardinals did?
I give Steve Keim a passing grade. He was in a terrible situation. And the minute that he accepted any phone call for Rosen in the offseason, it tipped their hand that they really were considering Kyler Murray. The coach they hired, Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray is a perfect fit for his system. The writing was on the wall throughout the 3 months of the draft process that was the direction that they were going to go in, which meant that every other team in the NFL, they had a clear and obvious, opportunity to lowball the Cardinals for Rosen's services. And so he was never really going to get a fair market deal for Rosen as far as the trade goes. And so people kind of look at what they got back for him and they kind of look at that as like, oh, they did poorly. But, they weren't going to get an offer for a first round pick this year. No way, no how. The best strategy that they had was take the guy that they were going after and Kyler Murray, who fits your system, who has the tools and the intangibles to kind of be a franchise player. And then hope that some team didn't get the guy they wanted at quarterback on day one of the draft and gave you a 2nd round pick for that guy. That did not materialize. Turned out the only 2 teams that were really in the market for quarterbacks were the Giants and the Redskins. They both ended up getting the guys they wanted. And then so at that point, just cut your losses and get the best you can get for Rosen, because you're clearly not going to bring him back and put him in a situation where he loses the quarterback competition to your 1st round draft pick, and then even more devalues his value and even blows up his confidence even more significantly. So they really did not have a great set of outcomes that was going to work out for them in this situation, and it was because they ended up as the 1st overall pick this year, and that was mostly because of Steve Keim hiring Steve Wilkes last year. And then just kind of the overall talent on the team was devoid at so many positions. They had just an absolutely brutal offensive line last year. They were aging position players at quarterback and defense all over the place. So it was a pretty important draft for them to kind of fill a lot of holes where they have replacement or below replacement level players with guys that can contribute this year and develop into future legitimate players in the NFL. And I think they did a good job of that. Now they sit here. Am I going to expect them to win more than 5.5 games this year? No freaking way. They'll put up impressive offensive statistics relative to last year. Sure. Kyler Murray will throw the ball 40 times, 50 times a game. Sure. But in no way, shape, or form would I expect that they have a roster that's now built to compete this year. 2020, we had the same conversation. If they add some more pieces in next year's draft, which looks to be a stronger draft overall, then I might be buying stock in the Cardinals next year. But this year, they have a very difficult schedule, very, very difficult schedule. I don't expect them to get any wins in the NFC West. The NFC West is going to be competitive top to bottom. They really have their work cut out for them getting to 6, and I don't see anything as good as this went for them, and it was probably about as good as it could have gone. I just don't see any way that they make that number this next year.
Bonnie, Whale Capper liking the under 5.5 Arizona Cardinal win total. How do you feel about how the whole draft was handled with the number 1 overall pick and moving Rosen over to the Dolphins? 5.5 is their win total. 25-1 to win the division.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you look at the Arizona, because I think their future is going to be very bright. It's an offensive, innovative game. You could say what you want about Chip Kelly coming to Philadelphia, but let's not forget, he had 3 seasons here in Philadelphia, 10-6, 10-6, and a game under 500. Got canned just because he couldn't adapt personally to the NFL and make any changes. Everybody hated the guy. He walked in the room, they hated him. If Kingsbury can make that move here, it is an offensive, innovative league, and he got the exact quarterback that's going to be perfect to run his offense. The only problem is, how's that going to translate to the NFL if the offense isn't cooking and you leave your defense out there time and time again? The one thing I do like, though, is if you're looking at the overall draft, they got some pieces with some players that are going to be able to compete right away. But Whale Capper's right. Just because Seattle's mixing and moving around some parts out there, they still got Russell Wilson. It's still Seattle. They're going to win games. San Francisco is ready to take a quantum leap this year with the talent they have based on the way they call game plans, getting their quarterback. Let's not forget, Rams ain't too bad in that division. They're really going to take their lumps. But the reason I think they erred a little bit here on Josh Rosen, did you probably have to get him out of town? Yes. But we're talking about Kyler Murray is tiny. This is the NFL. There are some big dudes out here. He's going to miss games in his career look, you can't, when they would say like, oh, Barry Sanders never took a hit head on and this kid's smart enough to get down. In the NFL, these guys are so fast now. You're going to get hit and land on them. Did you see the game against Oklahoma? That's going to be every single week for Kyler Murray where he's getting blasted in the pocket. I think if you kept Josh Rosen around, not to say Rosen was going to be the future of the team, but you're only paying him like $2 million. You already paid the signing bonus. Keep him around to keep that offense running, because let's just say Kyler Murray does look good, Jimmy, next year. 5-6 games in, he gets hurt or dinged up or separates his shoulder and takes a hit. Josh Rosen comes in with Cliff Kingsbury as his offensive coordinator, not the rockheads that they had last year. Now you're looking at a high second round or maybe low second round and say, hey, look, you can get this kid right now for pick 27 and $2 million a year and he can play. I think it might have worked out for him.
I love the breakdown. Now that we're sitting here talking about this division, let's talk a little bit more about my team just for a minute here, the 49ers. There's an enormous amount of excitement right now, and it starts with Bosa, D Ford, DeForest Buckner, Solomon Thomas, and Eric Armstead. I mean, this defensive line could be absolutely lethal. Their over-under win total is at 8 right now. Whale Capper, what do you think about these Niners?
I still have enormous questions about their defense, even with all of the investment that they now have in that defensive line. Much more of the way you succeed in the regular season of the NFL right now depends on your coverage ability than your ability to stop the run or rush the passer. The way what we're kind of learning, the more and more the kind of the data and analytics evolve about the NFL is pass rush can be neutralized if you have a quarterback that gets the ball out of his hands quickly. Just ask the Rams how it worked out for them in the Super Bowl against Tom Brady. They had some of the best players on the field when their defense was matched up against the Patriots offense. And it didn't matter for squat because you couldn't get to him in time because he was getting rid of the ball so quickly. This specifically neutralizes having a especially great pass rush, in my opinion. And when I look at the coverage holes that exist on the secondary for the Niners, I'm nervous about how they match up against the likes of all three of their potential opponents for now and the foreseeable future in the NFC West. All that said, getting Jimmy G back is going to be a nice bump for them. Their offense should be good. When I look at the Niners, I'm not really interested in trying to take a leap and say they're going to be great this year and grab their wins total over. I'm not saying that that Jimmy G is a bust and I want to swing on their win totals under. I'm looking at kind of game by game for these guys, especially week 1 against the Bucs. And I'm looking at some of these totals that we're going to see in like the high 40s range. And I'm saying no way, no how. This team is going to fly over these totals, especially early in the season, until the bookmakers kind of adjust to, how potent this offense is going to be and where the defense has holes. I'm going to be swinging away on some game total overs that the Niners are involved in.
And just quickly, and I want to bounce back to Donnie, but Whale Capper, when do you start hammering these? Do you wait for injury? Like, do you watch? Like, at what point do you think, oh, I've got an advantage here, I should jump on the over right now? How early is too early, and when do you usually do it?
So before, years past when I wasn't necessarily making especially large plays on the NFL, sometimes I would swing away in the summer months when you saw a good number and you knew it was going to move, and I would expect this number does go up. But I would like to see the limits kind of come up a little bit on these numbers, and I'd like to know a little bit more about the injury status and what Jimmy G looks like coming off of his rehabilitation. So I'll probably get involved in some of these week 1 plays more significantly in, after week 3 of the preseason, probably realistically.
After week 3 of the preseason, we're trying to get something going down in Miami for that week. Possibly all of us getting together, and we will be flying you guys to Miami. That week 3 Thursday nighters at Pro Player Stadium for a little Josh Rosen dress rehearsal. So I can't get too much into it, but we have we're trying to get you guys down. So keep that third week of the preseason. It's August 24th or 5th in mind. So Donnie, Rams are at 10.5, Seattle Seahawks at 8.5, 49ers at 8. What do you feel about the draft, the offseason? Do you see any of those numbers? Do you have an edge with any of those numbers?
I think 8's about right for the 49ers because I'm looking at taking them that next leap, because the one thing I did like, they were so banged up and beat up last year and still fought, and you saw the offensive game plan that once the weapons start to get in there, get healthy, they're going to be hell on wheels. But you still have a tough-ass conference because, again, I always get back to Seattle is always going to be Seattle. They can change their entire defense out, their entire running backs out. They can lose Doug Baldwin. As long as you have Russell Wilson, you plate yourself with 8 guaranteed wins without anybody else on the field, even just with him. But I think they're going to take that leap. I think they come in second place in the NFC West. I still think the Rams are the cream of the crop in that division, but I think they can slide into number 2. I think the future is really bright because I like to look at things where, more of the case, the offensive skill set players, it's what type of scheme and what are you running? And even if you don't have those high-end weapons, which they didn't have, they were still a really capable offense built on a nice young tight end. Now they get some weapons at wide receiver. I like the Deebo Samuel pickup. But also, I like to be able to, if you can have a competent offense and have a defense that eventually can get after the quarterback, great pickup in D Ford. You get Nick Bosa in the first round. You have a competent defensive line. I think the defense will make its way towards, and look, maybe we're a year ahead of time because I was wrong last year saying, I was looking at the Chicago Bears saying, as long as the quarterback improves, I think they'll be good. They were really good. This is one of those teams that doesn't have quite a defense, but I think they're 1 year ahead of schedule where you start saying, you know what, the 49ers, with the money that they have, they can now really go out and press the issue and get some dominant football players. I think they're 1 year away, but I thought the Bears were 1 year away, and they already came here. I like the 49ers this year.
Well, that gives me a lot of hope. Why don't we switch gears, Donnie, to your division, the NFC East. Eagles, slightly bigger favorites than the Cowboys, and then the Redskins are at 7-1. Giants are at 14-1. Washington drafts Dwayne Haskins, and there's excitement in the air. There's excitement in the air for this Redskin squad. The total is at 6, so there's not a ton of hope. Let's just look at all these season win totals in that division. The Eagles are at 9.5. The Giants are at 6. The Redskins are at 6. and the Cowboys are at, where is it here? The Cowboys are at 8.5. Donnie, it's your division. Any of those numbers jumping out at you? And what do you think Haskins is going to look like with the Redskins?
Yeah, two things I like in that. Cowboys at 8.5, over 8.5. Look, I know Dak Prescott's not a great quarterback, but they have the components in the division where you're going to hammer the Giants and you're going to hammer the Redskins. That's 4 wins right there, and they're always going to split with the Eagles. That's 5 wins right off the bat, and you just have to mix and match some other games out there. The Cowboys, every single year, have the single best schedule in the NFL because they never play a true road Thursday night football game. They always have Thanksgiving at home, and the NFL tries to slide them in when most people aren't paying attention and put them the following Thursday, which is still a 7-day layoff, and then give them that mini bye for the next week after that. They always have that benefit. They're going to be pretty good from the Cowboys end of it. I think the Cowboys can get to 10 wins. The Eagles and the Cowboys are going to ram heads all year long because I like Travis Frederick coming back. That's going to bolster that offensive line. I like they picked up Pollard out of Memphis and they picked up Weber out of Ohio State to sort of bolster just in case maybe Zeke needs a little bit of a breather. 2 more explosive type of guys. They have the wide receivers and they have a great defensive line and a great overall defense. This is me, an Eagles fan, saying I like the Cowboys this year, but money is money, and I think they're going to be good. The one team in the division, forget the Giants. The Giants are, as you have to say, up the creek without a paddle. They're going to be a horrific franchise for the next 3 to 4 years until they completely reset again. So I don't even have to talk about or go over them. They're completely out of mind. The Washington Redskins have one of the bigger boom or bust drafts that you're ever going to see. If it pans out the way they think, what a charge in the arm over the next couple of years. But as we like to see in the draft, when you're taking team totals, I love Washington under 6 because there's no way they're going to run out veteran quarterbacks like Case Keenum, and obviously Alex Smith isn't coming back. This is Dwayne Haskins' team. He's not a ton of starts in college. He's not going to come in the NFL and dominate. They're going to get waxed by the Eagles and the Cowboys. They're going under 6, and we'll see what happens in the future. But I like the Cowboys over, and I like the Washington Redskins under.
Wow, I like that. Well, Kepper, I can't wait to hear what you think of this division. And touch on, if you can, what you think of Daniel Jones at 6. It was a very interesting maneuver that was perplexing. And Gettleman's saying that he's saying that 2 teams were going to pick him before the 17th pick, and he might just be saying that at this point. But I'd love to hear what you think about that division.
I think Dave Gettleman convinced himself that there was 2 teams that wanted him. I don't think anyone really thought nearly as highly of Daniel Jones as Dave Gettleman did. And part of bringing in a guy like Daniel Jones who's raw, who needs to be coached up, who needs some reps to kind of have an NFL-ready game. Part of what that buys you is you didn't bring in a guy that's going to push Eli Manning for a starting quarterback spot this season. So the fact that Eli was on board with this plan, the fact that the Manning family as a whole was on board with this plan, all of it is kind of icky to me, because if I'm a Giants fan, especially, I'm kind of like, we're really letting like this guy at the tail end of his career like dictate the direction of our franchise for the next 5 years so that he can have one last year as a starting quarterback. And by the way, without a weapon as impressive as Odell Beckham Jr. So there's a lot of things that I'm scratching my head about what exactly is the process here for the Giants going forward as a competitive football team. We really just traded away Snacks Harrison for a 5th round pick and then drafted like the 3rd best player on Clemson to stop the run as a nose tackle. Like in today's NFL, if you're building your team around running backs in the draft last year and stopping the run in the draft this year, like you're rostering for the wrong era of football. Like those are not going to matter for you in the types of games you're going to be involved in. Yeah, you need to you can't have just a garbage unit out there as far as run stopping, because then if you're down in a close game, you're never going to get the ball back. But that's not the type of team that the Giants are right now. They're not going to be in a bunch of competitive games this season. I wouldn't at all be shy about swinging away at some Giants team total unders, because I do not believe that Eli Manning has a ton left in the tank. I do not believe that his stat line from last year can be held up as some sort of indication that he's still a competitive NFL quarterback. And the Giants look like a team that you're going to probably see, Saquon Barkley get 30, 40 carries. What's the average touches? He's going to get 30 touches a game this season. They're going to put a ton of miles on this kid early in his career and, wear him out while they're winning 5-6 games a season. Like, this stinks for a lot of parties involved. And I was not at all impressed with what the Giants did in this draft or what they've been doing as far as kind of setting up their roster under the Gettleman administration.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with both of these looks. Cowboys over, Giants under. Why don't we touch on the AFC South right now? The Colts, and are we expecting a big bounce back from the Jags? The Colts are favored at plus 120 to win the division. Texans plus 225. Jags plus 350. Titans plus 650. The Jags win total is at 8, and it's juiced to the under at this point. Colts win total is at 9.5. Juiced to the over. And then when we go to Houston, here it's 8.5, juiced to the over. And then with Tennessee, we're at 8.5, juiced to the under. And then we talk about what's going on with this Colts, Texans, Jags, Titans spot here. Colts did some nice work in the draft. They've added an incredible game-breaking wide receiver that is going to look very good beside Hilton. And then the Jags, it seems like, have to be in a bounce back spot. They get Josh Allen back to fall in their lap, a huge pickup for them. They're going to have Nick Foles. We have to expect Leonard Fournette to bounce back here. Colts, Texans, Jags, Titans. It feels to me like the Jags have value. I think the Jags should be able to bounce back here. Let's start with you, Donnie. What do you see about this AFC South?
Yeah, I mean, Jaguars should have had a better year last year. I think we can agree. But a lot of things went off the rails, and there's a lot of people in that locker room that like to mouth off. When things go sour, the Jaguars run and hide, and it's a wrap. I mean, we all figure when the Eagles played Jacksonville over in Great Britain, they're out popping bottles, spending 50, 60 grand like 24 hours before the game and couldn't give a damn about that football game and played like it in that game and the rest of the season. The one thing that'll be interesting is because, look, Nick Foles was very good in Philadelphia in a short stretch. Love him, put a Super Bowl, Lombardi on the wall, played outrageous football for about 2.5 games. When you take a look at the rest of the games that he had, not talking about his Chip Kelly days, but just most recent days, look, he's not a real mobile guy. He fits a certain system. The Eagles had an elite offensive line and the exact system that worked for him. Now you're going to take him down to Jacksonville, a little bit of a banged-up offensive line. We'll see what we get out of that. Maybe the weapons aren't as good, but the one thing that is going to pull that locker room together, at least early in the season, is Blake Bortles was so horrific last year that, like, you just enter the game. It's like when you have a bad pitcher on a major league mound. You say, dude, we need 9 runs to have a shot in this game. And before you know it, you're getting blown out, and your quarterback can't even complete like 5-yard outs. Like your defense, especially that defense, like, why are we even trying out here? Let's just rest it this year, and maybe it'll work again next year. I'm a little bit of a buyer just because I think Nick Foles will stabilize it where at least you're going to get competent quarterback play and can lean on a really good defense. You end up with Josh Allen. They're going to be able to get after the pass rush. That's going to be something. The one team there's 2 teams I'm going to downgrade in this division. The Tennessee Titans, just because I just don't like the offense. I mean, I like Marcus Mariota. We're just going to run the ball with a big physical back, and hopefully our quarterback makes some plays and stay healthy. I'm not with that. The Houston Texans, they're always going to be poorly coached behind Bill O'Brien. It's going to be the Colts, and it's going to be the Jaguars. If the Jaguars get off to a, let's say, 4-2, 5-2 type start, they're going to be in it the whole season. If they go 2-5, they're running south, they're packing their bags, and they're heading away. But I'm just something about the Texans and the Titans doesn't ring right to me this year, Jimmy.
Well, the Texans clearly panicked too when your Eagles stepped up and picked up Andre Dillard. They panicked. It was clear the Texans panicked with Titus Howard and then Max Sharping. I think these are very, very interesting breakdowns. I see the Jaguars as able to bounce back, but you're right. You're talking about the locker room and everything that went down there. I need to get a better idea of what the vibe is like, and we can get that in the coming months. Whale Capper, AFC South, Colts favored. Colts, Texans, Jags, and then Titans.
Yeah, so I like all the unders in this one, to be honest. I don't think any of these teams are very great. I think the Colts are the clear head and shoulders above the other 3 teams, in my opinion. But 9.5 is too high of a number to be betting an over on when you have a team that has fundamentally still has legitimate holes on their roster that they did not address in free agency. I'm not exactly sure what they're saving all of their salary cap for. This is a team that rolled over an enormous amount of cap on top of they have, it's the entire roster is made up of, young and, developing players, except for Andrew Luck, obviously. And, they'll be competitive. They'll be good. Andrew Luck is great. They have a great coach in Frank Reich. Chris Ballard deserves a huge pat on the back for, his ability to kind of manipulate where he wants to be in the draft and still get the players that he covets, while, at the same time taking multiple swings in the parts of the draft where you kind of have boom or bust guys. So, they're positioned well for future years. Next, 3, 4, 5 years, the Colts are going to be perennial contenders. 9.5 is just too much to get involved in an over on. And then as we kind of work our way down, I'm not buying the Jags as a big bounce back this year. They still have massive issues when it comes to protecting the quarterback. I know they got the guy that they wanted in Juwan Taylor at the offensive line on day 2, but it's still it's still an offensive line that has massive holes, in my opinion. It's still an offense that's deplete of really any noteworthy weapons. I don't think Leonard Fournette is in any way, shape, or form a back to be feared in the current iteration of the NFL. I don't know that he'll even be on the roster for all of this season. And the wide receiver and tight end groupings for this team, nobody scares me. And you got a guy like Nick Foles, who obviously I have a noted history of not believing in Nick Foles, so he probably makes me eat these words. But I just, I don't like when you give a backup quarterback that kind of money and expect him to come in and perform like, a top 10 quarterback in the league. He's probably middle of the pack at best. That when you look at it at the end of this year, and I don't think he's cracking 8 wins. And then you get to the Houston Texans, who I completely agree with Donnie are poorly coached. On top of the fact that they completely whiffed on their ability to evaluate and upgrade their offensive line, which was an enormous problem this year, and something that they absolutely had to get fixed. And it's not just that they have a bad line. They have a quarterback in Deshaun Watson who does not get the ball out very quickly. So they absolutely have to create a pocket and give him time and give his receivers the ability to get down the field. So it was shocking that they ended up with the picks that they did on the offensive line. I didn't think either of them were worthy of picking where they got picked. And you throw into the mix Bill O'Brien is not my favorite coach in the league, and they're an under, and that they have the toughest schedule out of all of these guys. That's all of this is enormous red flags for getting involved in the Texans. I like their under. And then the one that I like the most on the under is the Tennessee Titans. I don't understand the direction that this franchise is going in. I don't understand what they are doing in terms of their offensive approach. You're building an offense in 2019 to compete in the NFL, and you're going to feature Derrick Henry. Like this spells trouble more ways than I can count. And Mariota, I know, is going to be effectively playing for a job next season because he's on his 5th year, and guy gets hurt way too often to expect that he's going to give you 16 games of top talent play. So, the Titans top to bottom, is an easy look to fade in my opinion. And really the entirety of the AFC South looks like a fade, if I'm being honest.
I love it. Unders. All right, let's talk a bit about the NFC North. Bears coming off a 12-4 season. Now they don't have Fangio. They don't have Howard. They lose 2 defensive secondary starters. What are we going to see here? Are they an under? Right now, this spot, NFC North, they are slightly favored over the Packers, who are slightly favored over the Vikings, and then the Lions are way, way back there. So Chicago over under 9.5 wins. And I know a lot of people are already talking under for the 9.5 win total. Detroit here is at 7 wins. Man, 7 wins. I don't even know if they're capable. It feels like they've taken a step back. And then with Green Bay is at 9.5 wins, and the Vikings are sitting there at 9 wins. Is it a step back time for these Bears? You had a spectacular read on them during the season last year, Donnie. What do you see happening in the NFC North?
Yeah, I love the Bears. I love the Bears on defense, and I think Trubisky is going to take another step. But when you're talking about win totals and when you want to really gas up on them, it's like, when you look at the NFC, you figure or the NFC East, you could pick off the Washington Redskins. You could pick off the Giants. these four teams are going to beat the hell out of each other. I mean, if you have Green Bay coming back, and look, say what you want about Green Bay, they keep on just throwing tons of draft picks at the defense, and it never corrects itself. But again, as long as you have Aaron Rodgers, a healthy Aaron Rodgers, you're going to be viable. The Vikings, if they can get their quarterback play straightened out, they have a really good football team. And then look at the Detroit Lions, they can always sneak up. We always see, playing in the Dome and the Green Bay Packers going there and having trouble. And then you have, of course, the Chicago Bears. So when you're looking at team totals and you're the same way we look at like the AFC South, if you don't have that real bottom of the basement team, I can't go above and say, you know what, this team's definitely going to win 10 games, because when your division is beating you up and then you go outside of the division, what are you going to get out of that? So for me, this is the toughest division for me to read. But if I just sit back and try to analyze and say, you know what, I like what Matt Nagy's doing. If you can get a field goal kicker that can make some kicks in Chicago, that defense is loaded for bear. They will keep you in every single ball game. If Trubisky can make that next step up, because they do have weapons out there that I do like at wide receiver and running back, they should be okay and win that division. But they're going to beat up each other, and I would downgrade everybody's win totals just because it's a tough division and they're going to be hitting each other off each week.
Whale Capper, Bears 7-1 to win the conference. Packers 10-1 to win the conference. Bears slightly favored over the Packers, who are slightly favored over the Vikings in the division. How do you see any angles at this point?
I think Donnie's framing there was pretty much spot on. This is going to be kind of a round robin of beating each other up. I think that the Bears got a phenomenally poor schedule to start off the season, and things could get dicey real quick. I do not think that Mitch Trubisky is the answer. The Bears defense, you're right, Donnie, they're going to keep you in every game, but Mitch Trubisky is going to throw you out of a bunch of those games. And we saw this with the Jaguars last year, right? Like, honestly, I feel like the Bears this offseason pretty much exactly like I felt like the Jaguars last offseason. Like, they overperformed like crazy last year on the back of just some phenomenal defensive play. They racked up wins in the front half of their schedule last year, where they had a very, very soft landing, a bunch of real nice situational matchups for them to get the season started off right. They rolled that momentum right into just what they go 8 wins over their expected, or 6 or 7 wins over their expected total last year. So regression for sure seems like it will come calling, because if we know anything about like the analytical side of the NFL, it is much, much more difficult to repeat elite defense year over year than it is to repeat elite offense. And so the idea that the Bears are just going to run it back out and have just as good a defensive performance this year as they did last year, especially when you take away Vic Fangio, I have significant questions about that. And so all of this kind of really does, the whiff of fade the Bears is in the air, and I don't think it's like crazy. I think there's legitimate case to be made that, yes, that they are due for regression. But there's not a clear and obvious team that I think steps up and seizes control of that division, because I think the Vikings are headed in the wrong direction in terms of their offensive approach under Mike Zimmer. I think Zimmer's going to be on the hot seat at the end of this season. Kirk Cousins is not the answer at quarterback, and they're paying him a boatload of money this year and next year. So you could see an entire clean sweep of the house at some point in the next offseason. You have a team like the Green Bay Packers, who did some absolutely head-scratching decision-making during this last draft. I thought it almost felt passive-aggressive towards Aaron Rodgers, the way they rostered this team through the draft this year. I don't get a sense. I did not have high expectations for the GM that took over from, who was the other guy? TT, whatever. Mike McCarthy and TT. Mike McCarthy needed to be removed, but Matt LaFleur doesn't look like the answer as head coach to me. The general manager needed to be removed, and this guy that they've put in his place does not look like the answer to me. All of this goes to say we are really going to sit and watch as 10 years of Aaron Rodgers' career gets squandered at the end. And if you are an Aaron Rodgers fan, that's sad. And if you hate the Packers, then you're probably delighted by this. But I don't think the Packers just, magically leap up into that kind of contender in the NFC just on his play alone, because they have too many holes in this roster, especially in key positions that he relies on. So it's not obvious to me that there's a favorite to win the NFC North. I will say that the Lions, again, I thought they did a poor job in the draft as well, but people are kind of expecting them to be the dregs, and I don't think they're going to be that bad. So there might be an awful lot of opportunities to back the Lions in game by game betting because, people like great example. Week 1, they're like a pick 'em against the Cardinals. That doesn't make any sense to me. No way, no how should, Matt Stafford, be a pick 'em against a team that is going through what the Cardinals went through. We don't even know who the Cardinals Week 1 starter is going to be. Presumably it's going to be Murray, but there's no guarantee that he's ready to go and to be thrown out there in Week 1. And if they do, that he's going to be effective. So, the Lions are going to be a good team to kind of back, I think, in game by game betting. And the Bears are going to be a good team to fade in game by game betting, especially in the early part of the season where people expect them to be a contender, but they have a bunch of very tough situational matchups.
I agree. There's going to be a lot of public money on the Bears, and we're going to be able to take advantage of that early. Let's talk AFC West, and we have to start with Tyreek Hill and the tapes that have come out and him looking like the person or sounding like the person that we feared he might be. Chiefs don't have a first-round pick. They understand the situation with Tyreek Hill, so they have to find the heir apparent with their first pick in the second round. They do that with McCole Hardman. It's a tough spot that they're in all of a sudden, and that's what happens. We don't need to get into these types of debates, but they got very, very skilled players late in the draft because of character issues, and it's come back to bite them now. They're still big favorites in the AFC West, minus 163 here. Chargers are plus 200. Broncos are plus 1,100. Raiders are plus 1,200. Let's quickly look. The Chiefs' win total this year is at 10.5. The Chargers is at 9.5. Let's go see quickly what the Broncos is at 7. And then the Oakland Raiders here is at 6.5. Donnie, this AFC West has become messy with the Chiefs not taking that next step, possibly, that we thought they were going to take. And you take these superstars, game changers out of their lineup, these enormous weapons out of their lineup, and do they come back to the pack now? What do you think, Donnie?
Yeah,
AFC
I mean,
West?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're taking a look at what the future might have been for the squad. Andy Reid might have coached for another 10 years. If you're going to tell me you're going to have Patrick Mahomes, Kareem Hunt at running back, Tyreek Hill, and just add some pieces in there, this offense was going to set the league on fire for years to come. Then all of a sudden, you slowly take away these chinks in the armor. And Tyreek Hill, there's absolutely no way, shape, or form he's going to come back to be for the Kansas City Chiefs this year. And you know how bad they're hanging on to it. The Chiefs right now, they should have gotten rid of him anyway when you heard the reports coming out. Domestic violence, again, going to seep in. Usually a team with a little bit more clout's going to be like, we're going to move on from this. They loved, even when the DA came out and said, Jimmy, look, a crime committed here. We just don't know who actually committed it. And they're like, thank goodness, please keep your name out of this and don't do this again. Well, people that do bad things are going to continue to do bad things. And then the report comes out, and then you see the ownership talking about it. They're looking for every strand right now to possibly make it happen. Let's not forget, Tyreek Hill was what? A day or two away from signing the biggest offseason, wide receiver deal in the history of the NFL. Then they had to back off it when these allegations first came out a couple months back. But taking a look forward here with the Chiefs, and they're not even getting a lot of movement here. When you still see like their overall total to win the Super Bowl, it just seems like that. Well, hey, they have Patrick Mahomes. Let's not also forget, you get rid of Dee Ford, you get rid of Justin Houston, you revamp the defense, you add Tyrann Mathieu, but you lose Eric Berry. I don't really see a lot of massive upgrades for the Chiefs for them to continue to sit on this upper level pedestal, because when you look at them going forward, all right, they got a nice young wide receiver in the draft. Andy Reid's coaching really well, but you brought up a good point there, Jimmy, because now you get rid of these guys and then you bring in Frank Clark, who has his own off the field issues, and you give him $100 million and give up draft picks in order to get that guy. I don't really know what Kansas City's trying to do here. It's a shame because they would have run the league, or at least the AFC West, for the next couple of years. But they have a downgrade in my book. I still think right now the Chargers would be the class of the division. I think the Oakland Raiders are coming on strong, but I don't really – the Oakland Raiders to me over the next couple of years, again, one of those boomer bust teams. They have so much combustibility with around that franchise, whether their TV GM, their TV head football coach, Antonio Brown, who at the first sign of things going south, he is going to lop that quarterback off at his knees, and that'll be a lot of fun to watch. But in the AFC West, I think it's going to be the Chargers there. I think the Denver Broncos have a little bit better year than last year if they get some competent quarterback play out of Joe Flacco. I don't know if that's at his stage of his career, if that's even possible. But the Kansas City Chiefs, where people just look at it, hey, they're going to come out and be fine. they're not going to be fine this year. Will they win football games? Sure, they're talented with a great quarterback and a great scheme, but their talent is completely diminished from what it was going to be this year.
Yeah, without a doubt. It just happened so quickly. So, Whale Capper, Chiefs are minus 163 to win the AFC West, Chargers plus 200. I bet you will see that come closer together before the season starts. The Chiefs are plus 375 to win the conference, and to win outright right now, Chiefs are 8-1 at plus 800. What do you think angles here with the AFC West?
I would flip those numbers on the Chargers and Chiefs, to be honest, for the West. I think the Chargers are probably the best bet on the board of any team to win their division, and I expect them to win the West and it not to be close. Really, the only thing that's keeping me from being more bullish on the Chargers this year is that they still don't have a home field advantage. So their home games are going to be gnarly, as always. But the Chiefs have taken the Chiefs were the biggest losers of the weekend. It wasn't close, in my opinion. Tyreek Hill takes the top off the defense. Say, whatever cliche you want for a guy with his speed and his ability at wide receiver fits the narrative here. And without him in the game, it's going to make it significantly tougher for Pat Mahomes to repeat what he did last year. Add to that, I don't like the Frank Clark move. I really don't like anything that the Chiefs GM has done since taking over for John Dorsey. John Dorsey might have secretly been kind of a huge loss for that franchise. But clearly, in my opinion, the defense has the worst secondary in the NFL. And I don't think maybe it's debatable between two other. I'll say they clearly have a bottom three secondary in the NFL. And as we were kind of laying out at the beginning of this show, you absolutely need coverage to be competitive, especially come playoff time, especially when you're, in matchups against elite teams, and in matchups against the Chargers, who have a wide array of weapons in the receiving game that can hurt you. I don't think the Chargers really have. I really don't think the Chiefs have much of a shot at containing the Chargers defensively this season, and it's going to be much tougher for them to get the type of points and the type of the type of wins that they were able to accrue last year. And I know Andy Reid gets 10 wins every year. You can pretty much write home about it. But with the way that the secondary is configured this year, I'm just not seeing it for the Chiefs. And I'm not buying really at all on the Raiders. I think we have yet to see John Gruden tell us or give any indication that he knows how to coach a team for the current NFL that we live in. The most ridiculous story of the entire draft was the Raiders draft room freaking out that the Eagles traded ahead of them to take the running back that they wanted in the first round. Like, that right there is all that you need to know, that they have not figured out the right way to construct a roster or what their priorities ought to be competing for the competing with the elite teams in the NFL right now. You should not really even be considering a running back in the first round, in my opinion, particularly a year like this where no one really thinks that the running backs are all that good. And the idea that, you still have not shored up anything on the interior of your offensive line, and you have a quarterback in Derek Carr who's not great when the pocket collapses from the middle and he's feeling pressure up the middle. I think you're literally just going to be running it back exactly what we saw last year from the Raiders, except now you've got Antonio Brown out there pissed that he's not getting the ball as much as he ought to be. And all of this smells like disaster. And it's going to be wild to see, them behind the Dolphins, behind the Bengals on the draft board next year with like two good quarterback prospects, when both of those teams are going to take quarterbacks off the board, and the Raiders are going to be sitting there like, maybe we should just keep Derek Carr and pay him another $30 million or something insane, because he makes double what he ought, double what fair market value would be for a quarterback of his skill in the NFL right now. So, the Raiders to me look like a complete and utter dumpster fire going out to the desert next year, and it's going to be wild to watch. And then the Broncos, again, bringing in Flacco was a head-scratching move. Pretending like Flacco can compete in today's NFL is a reach. Drafting a quarterback in Drew Lock, who not super sold on. seems like another misstep for John Elway. And really, John Elway is not proving to be an especially competent GM in and of it, in his abilities. So I think it's pretty fair to write off the Broncos, write off the Raiders, expect the Chiefs to regress, and the Chargers run away with this thing.
I think that makes a ton of sense. The breakdown makes a ton of sense. Big Ragoo says NFL will have ultimate mediocrity and parity this year. We've got to shut this show down, but we didn't touch the NFC South, which is pretty exciting for me. I'm happy to see Bruce Arians back. So, we've watched them for years. An offensive-minded coach. Their first 5 picks in the draft, all defensive side of the ball. They got the best linebacker in the draft in Devin White. They bring in Todd Bowles. I'm excited to see what they do in Tampa. The Saints are minus 200. The Falcons plus 400. Oh, yeah. Falcons. Sorry, gonna go through that all fucking year. The Panthers are at plus 550, and the Bucks are at 10-1. The Panthers, it just seems like the Cam Newton days are numbered. It just really feels like I'm not sure how much longer we'll be seeing them at this point. I would love if you guys could we've got to shut this show down, but Donnie, is there anything in the NFC South with the Saints favored and everybody else pretty much quite a bit back? The Falcons got a lot of anger and dislike about their draft this year, and the Panthers with Newton. I mean, we'll have to see, but it certainly feels like he's much older than the age on his identification says. Saints at minus 200. Donnie, what do you think about this NFC South to close out the show?
Yeah, I think it's the Saints' division to win, and rather win easily. I actually like what the Falcons did with their 2 front line guys to try to bolster up Matt Ryan, but it doesn't really do a lot to help the rest of that football team where he needed some help. But also, when you take a look at the Carolina Panthers, I think something is really wrong with Cam Newton's throwing shoulder, not getting a huge change, or going for surgery and just get some rest and we'll do a couple minor procedures here. His arm, he couldn't throw the ball 15 yards last year, so he's going to come back and be super healthy, and they're going to run him again. What is he going to do? Run the ball 15 times a game and damage that shoulder even more? The one thing that I like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I like where they're headed in the future, but the NFL just absolutely harangued them this year. What was it? One home game in 60 days? You can't win like that in the NFL, so they're automatically out of it. Saints run away with this division.
Yeah, what do you think, Whale Capper? Saints just run away with this? Is it easy? But minus 200, not a lot of value there.
No, I think the Falcons have a shot. I agreed with almost every point Donnie made just there. Right off the Panthers, you got Norv Turner calling plays. You got an offensive line that can't protect Cam Newton. Potential for injury way too high to expect them to compete. The Bucs got absolutely hosed by the schedule makers. God knows what they did to deserve that. And the Saints, you got Drew Brees a year older, and you got you haven't really injected this team with any new talent over the last 2 seasons. So things could get a little stale. They could be a little vulnerable. Meanwhile, the Falcons, they get addition by getting players back from injury who are going to be expected to be significant parts of their pass defense last year. And just having those guys back should make a nice bit of difference. Although I don't understand what their draft room was doing at all. I thought they reached on pretty much every player they drafted. And I don't think Thomas Dimitroff has really set this team up to kind of for the long arc. But so it's kind of setting up in my mind like 2019 is sort of the last hurrah here for Matt Ryan, last chance to make another run at a Super Bowl, last chance to make some noise in the NFL before things really do start to fall apart in Atlanta.
Sorry, I can't laugh because of this lung situation I have. And Noli knows says I heard that Falcons too. Whale Capper did say Falcons. I heard Falcons. Man, it's such a treat to be rolling with you guys.
I said Falcons on purpose. Yeah,
I know you did. But it was nice.
The Millennium Falcons. Let's go.
Yes.
It is an absolute treat to roll with you guys. I'm so excited about another season of working with you, getting after it early. We got big things ahead of us, and we got a great chat rolling with us. What a treat it is to be a part of this show with you guys. First off, Whale Capper, where can we find you on Twitter? What shows do you have coming up that you want us to know about?
I'm at Whale_Capper. We're still doing weekly podcasts, even though it's not the NFL season right now. We're focusing a lot on, kind of the niche events going on. Last week, we did an NFL draft handicapping preview show that we absolutely just wipe the floor with the books. It'll be interesting to see if any of us have any outs next year for betting the NFL draft at all. But besides that, the NBA playoffs are going strong right now, and we got the Kentucky Derby coming up, the handicap this week. So a lot of fun stuff going on right now in the world of sports betting that you can all track all that down on my Twitter page.
Yeah, Paco Healy saying it's a great podcast. It is certainly a great podcast, and you're a great Twitter follow as well. Donnie Rightside, my guy, where can we find you on Twitter? What shows you got coming up?
Yep, at Rightside VP, as always, that betting show, me and Teddy, every day usually airs right around 4 o'clock, even though we're on the air right now. You can always catch that. And also at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Central, the closing line live on WCKG Radio. We do that Monday through Friday. But I can't wait. Look, as we always like to say, we make our money right now because getting us through the Aprils, the Mays, the Junes, Julys, and August, once it takes off, we're going to have a lot of fun. Nice getting together here, talking a little bit of football, getting those juices flowing. Football season's here already. I love it.
Oh, I love it too. We don't have a show without the great insights and funny ideas and all the things that the chat gives us. So thank you guys so much for supporting the show here. The Audible is back for another year, and I am pumped. So we're not entirely sure what the schedule will be. We were Tuesdays and Fridays last year. I will let you guys know how it bangs out moving forward, but we will be back, and we will be back often. Thank you so much, Whale Capper. Thank you so much, Donnie Rightside. Thank you so much, everybody at SBR and everybody in the chat. We will talk again soon and see you guys again soon. Thanks so much.